Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Oh, interesting. I'm driving in today and a song comes on from back in the day by the Police, and it's called Spirits in the Material World. And it's an interesting song. Just love the way it sounds, the intensity of it, the message of it. And then I'm here today, and this is just this morning, and I run into this gentleman. We are going to talk about the paranormal and what that means, what's around us, what can be found around us. He's got an organization that investigates just that. And he's the owner, founder, president of Great State Paranormal. And I'm intrigued. I got to learn more about this. Dustin Crowley is with us on the program. Welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome to have you here. Paranormal. How do you define that?
It's kind of tricky. So, maybe the loosest phrase would just be anything that's not normal. So, even with my organization, while we specifically specialize in like ghosts and apparitions and that kind of thing, we also have people that are fascinated with cryptids like Bigfoot. We have people who are all about aliens. For my money, I am very specialized in like ghosts and demons and that kind of thing. And I know how to handle myself with those. But if I'm in the woods and I come across a Bigfoot, you know, uh, I'm kind of out of my depth in that field. So broadly, it typically is just anything that is working within spirits and other apparitions that might be through the veil. And we usually think about it as the modern equivalent of the spirituality movement from the late Victorian era.
When we talk about ghosts, are ghosts good and can be bad? There's two different types. Am I seeing that right?
Oh, absolutely. So the easiest way I explain it to people is if you were a good person in life, you're a good person in death. If you were not a good person in life, then you're probably not a good person in death. But I would say the average spirit that you might encounter is just going to be average. Um, I've got a friend who's a necromancer, and they have a saying that I'm really a big fan of. And Mortellus, if you're listening, I will give you full credit for this one. If you go to your average Walmart on a Tuesday afternoon, you will not run into Mother Teresa. You're not going to run into the Pope. But you will also probably not run into John Wayne Gacy or Jeffrey Dahmer. You might run into someone who's upset because they had a hard day at work and they're having to pick up dinner for their family. You might run into someone who is picking up a birthday cake to have a celebration. But that can change very day to day. So you might get some happy people, you might get some sad people, but you're probably never going to encounter one of the two extremes.
You say if you're a good person in life, you'll be a good person in afterlife as a ghost. It's kind of relative when you think of it that way, because an individual may say, I'm a good person. And other people would say, that's a horrible person. Look what you've done. So who judges?
Well, it's very subjective. So let me ask a question. Have you ever had a bacon cheeseburger before?
Of course.
In parts of the world, you are now a terrible person. If you're in India, you can't eat cow. If you practice like half of the faiths on this planet, you cannot eat pork. So while you enjoy that very delicious burger, you're also now an immoral person.
Yeah, it's clearer that it is relative. But then again, there are some things that people do that you could ask 100 people of all different faiths, background, location, all of that, and everybody would say that was horrible if that person did.
Yep.
Hmm.
And those are a lot easier to define. And even with what we do, sometimes we go to insane asylums, sometimes we go to penitentiaries, and those spirits definitely have that kind of vibe to them. And my personal favorite place that we host public ghost hunts at is the USS North Carolina battleship in Wilmington, North Carolina. Um, it is essentially a modern day memorial to all of the fallen from the state of North Carolina that died during World War II. The ship itself is the most decorated battleship from the war, and it
Hmm.
did suffer a torpedo attack. So all of the spirits that are still on that ship, they are people that died valiantly fighting for freedom, fighting for their country, and helping to liberate others. So those spirits are vastly different than what we'll encounter at, let's say, West Virginia State Penitentiary.
What is the difference? You said spirits, we talked about ghosts. What's the difference between spirits and ghosts, or is there?
It's just the name. Um, so essentially, there's a couple of different types of spirits or ghosts. So you've got things such as a residual haunting. That's essentially a traumatic experience is captured in the time and place, and it is going to play almost like if you're watching an instant replay of something from a sports game. Um, it's not intelligent. It can't interact with you. You can't interact with it. But that's where you see like a lady in white walking up a staircase every night at 12 o'clock, something along those lines.
Hmm.
And then you've got your more intelligent spirits. So these are uh, entities that might be stuck between this realm and the next. And these are ones that you can actually communicate to. And depending on how much energy they've retained, the current concept is with the third law of thermodynamics, or at least I think it is, that energy cannot be created or destroyed. When you pass on, the energy of your body lingers, especially if you think of the human body, we are created of nothing but electricity and energy. It's how our heart beats, our brain thinks, etc., etc. So the more energy you have, the stronger you're able to communicate. And then you also have your non-human type entities. So that would be things such as your angels and your demons, um, elemental type spirits. These are just spirits that are more associated with like fire and earth and wind. So
Hmm.
there's no communicating that you can do, but they're just present. They're typically more tied to like Native Americans, but still kind of loose. And then there is also a concept of an Eidolon, and that comes more from Greece, like ancient Greece. And that is that you can basically have a haunting of a person that is still alive. So almost if so some event is traumatic enough, and then um, it kind of tears a part of your soul, and that fragment of your soul lingers on.
Is is it true? And I was recently told this that a ghost is one somebody stuck in transition and haven't hasn't arrived yet, wherever they're arriving to, the other
Yes.
side, crossing over, where a spirit has. Is there any truth to that?
Depending on the exact definition you use, could be. Um, Part of the beauty of this field is we don't have any hard and fast definitions for anything. There's no academic journals, although a good friend of mine, Alex Matsuo, they are working on getting some more research-driven paranormal research going on. But even with that, you can't completely follow the scientific method because it's almost like conducting an interview like you and I are doing now. It's not completely repeatable because it's just more of a conversation. You can always measure certain like temperatures and electromagnetic field pulses, but you can never fully replicate an encounter.
I want to go into the investigations that you do and how you support those trying to figure this all out. Before we go there, your journey into all of this, it's very specific, very eclectic. Uh, not a lot of people out there do what you do.
Oh
So
yeah.
how did this all come about for you?
So it's a pretty long journey to where I am today. Originally, I went into ministry and I was a pastor for several years. And the denomination I was a part of had this philosophy that essentially everything's caused by a demon. Like you drink alcohol, well, you have the alcoholic demon. Um, did you commit adultery? Well, that's because of the adultery demon. Well, being a good pastor, what am I going to do? I'm going to study how to combat these dark forces. And so that led me into the study of demonology and to the practice of exorcism. And then from there, I eventually left the corporate church just because I couldn't reconcile a lot of the hypocrisies and the bureaucratic red tape that I constantly had to go through to do anything. Um, and so that led me to the broader paranormal field at large. And then over the years, doing my own private investigations, I've worked for a national ghost hunt event company. I founded my own team. Um, and now not only do I run my own team, but I also help mentor other paranormal investigators and paranormal organizations.
When we see those TV shows where there are paranormal investigations, do you feel they're legit?
No. Well, asterisks, no. Um,
Okay.
some of them are more legit than others, but what most people don't quite understand is your average TV show is filmed at one location over a week. And in most cases, they even have the um, I'll call them actors just because I mean they're acting on the TV show. It is essentially a reality TV show.
Hmm.
Um, they have them wear the same clothes across all 7 days, which I couldn't tolerate. That would be terrible. But what you're seeing in usually 10 to 15 minutes of that TV show, because they usually have history and a little bit of bantering back and forth, but that maybe 10 minutes of evidence is collected over being in the field for 8 to 10 hours a day for
Yep.
7 days. So, I mean, depending on where you go, yes, you're going to get 10 to 15 minutes of evidence across a week. But then when we host like a public investigation for people to buy a ticket and come in, they often expect that they're going to have the same level of activity. And it's just not legitimate. But then there are also those that fake evidence. Um, some of them are rather litigious, so I won't say their names, but they are rather popular. So yeah,
I
it is entertaining.
I I agree with you, Dustin. And I'm the worst person to watch a reality show with because I've seen them shot from the production end of it. And a lot of it is embellished. You have the crew there for 7 days. You're paying them. We got to get something.
Yep.
So whatever that something is, whether and this is not just paranormal, but if we focus on that using what you and I are talking about, we got to get something. So either it's real something or it's embellished, if you will. Maybe somebody reports, well, I saw a mouse move and somebody reported that. Well, all right, we're going to recreate it and make it look like it actually happened, etc. So yeah, I'm right there on your page with that. There's a lot of latitude, and every reality show it plays to the camera. Sorry,
I
there
mean,
it
it
is.
does. And look, I enjoy watching them,
Sure.
but I do feel that it does slightly more harm than good to our field in particular. Because if you look at a lot of like paranormal conventions, if you don't see a headliner, if you will, um, someone who is on a more mainstream TV show, people are often like, oh, well, I'm not going to go, or why should I go listen to this person over this other person? And really, we're looking to people who aren't doing actual research, who are not actually in the field day in and day out. And that's where a lot of people are kind of starting from scratch with new organizations and new teams today. And it's easy to kind of tell who a team is like modeling themselves after. If you look at a paranormal organization's website, do they have skulls? Do they have smoke? If everything is designed to just be evil looking and gothic looking, if it's some mix of what Stone Cold Steve Austin or The Undertaker would have worn in the 90s, then odds are they're following after one of these reality TV paranormal personalities.
Mm.
If you see an organization that focuses more on religion, spirituality, technology, if they have a collection of research available, then they are probably following after a person or group of people that are actually in the field day in and day out.
Hmm. It's almost as if they have to play to the crowd. We have to add a skull. We have to add something dark here. So, it looks spooky, scary, and all of that.
Yep.
For you, and I know that you spearhead investigations, does that mean that somebody can call you and say, I think I've got something going on here? Can I hire you to look deeper into it? Is that some of the stuff, some of the work that you do?
It is. So if someone in the area has a suspicion that they might have a haunting or something at their house, they can reach out to our organization and we will send one of our lead investigators out and we will investigate, try and see what we can debunk, what we can prove. And then if there is a spirit of attachment and it's something that's negative, something that's affecting the family, especially if there's children or something involved,
Hmm.
then we will work on a plan to remedy the issue. But the only thing I will add on is you cannot hire us because we do all of that for free.
Wow. Is this what you just said reminds me of something, a movie, um, Eradicating a Spirit, The Exorcist. Movie
Mhm.
came out back in the day. I think it was redone too. Um, can it be like that in some situations?
In my experience as an exorcist, yes and no. So I've had an exorcism where it was being conducted outside in the middle of July in North Carolina, which, if any of your listeners are used to North Carolina, it is hot and humid, very hot. So as soon as I began the ritual, the temperature plummeted to the point where me, my assistant, and the client were shivering. We could see our breath. And then as soon as the ritual was over, the temperature was right back up to like 99 degrees. Um, you can often see like flies or insects congregating if a rite of exorcism is being conducted, very similar to how it was in the movie. Sometimes you will hear voices coming through the client, very similar to what you see in the Exorcist movie. I've had other peers in the field claim that people have levitated off the ground. I've never personally seen it, so can't quite speak to that one.
Sure.
And I've also never seen anybody's head do a 360. So a little bit of truth, a little bit of embellishment, but also it's Hollywood, so you got to make it look worthwhile.
Well, yeah, same thing about the reality show, but experiencing a 99-degree temperature dropping to the point where you see, somebody's breath. Okay, that's enough for me. Like,
Yep.
yeah.
And I'm not going to lie on that particular case because I get a lot of exorcism consultations because I do list them an exorcist. And at a recent convention, I did a quick crunch of the numbers, and I've only had an actual exorcism case 0.38% of the time. So pretty rare.
Wow.
And in this case, I also was thinking, well, there might just be a spirit attached, but it's probably not demonic because it almost never is. And so this was like the first exorcism session, because I usually do them in multiple sessions instead of just one long day and a half marathon, like you'd have seen with the exorcism of Emily Rose, which was very highly documented. So when it comes to something like that, I usually do one and just see if we can remove whatever minor attachment might be. And after the temperature change and that kind of stuff happened, I was like, okay, yeah, this one might actually be demonic.
Hmm. What in all the work you've done so far, which one, best description, freaked you out the most?
Hmm. I would say probably the one that freaked me out the most, and this might seem kind of comical, but uh we were hosting a public ghost hunt at a location, and this location had what is referred to as a mimic. So it's a spirit that will talk to you using someone else's voice. And one of our team members, I had her go get I can't remember if it was supplies or get us something to eat for dinner, something basic, where we watched her leave the building and she had to go. So I went to go open the door and it was locked. And I was like, oh crap, I'm gonna have to walk all the way around the building to get to the other side of this door and open it. And then I heard her voice on the other side say my name. And I was like, why don't you go ahead and open the door? And then she just kind of giggled. And so I'm sitting there, 3 or 4 minutes and nothing happens. And so now at this point, I'm like livid. So I stomp all the way down these stairs, outside, across the building, back up, and I get to the other side of the door and she's not there. So I'm like, all right, she's clearly messing with me, but today's not the day. So I pull out my phone, I call her, and I'm like, all right, where are you at? We need to have a talk now because like I'm kind of mad. And she's like, well, I just got to the store or whatever. So I'll be back in like 5 minutes. I was like, okay. So hearing her voice clear as day, and she had a very distinctive voice. So it couldn't be someone imitating her. That was probably the one that freaked me out the most. Um, but then again, I got my start within like demonology and exorcism. So I was fully well versed in a lot of the darker things, but having something use a friend of mine's voice, that was probably the one that freaked me out the most.
Wow. That would freak me out because it sounds that it was intentional to use that voice to try and get at you because
Yep.
of what you were doing. You were targeted. Wow. Can you do this virtually?
Some say you can, some say you can't. Um, for what I do, I typically lean more into the spiritual methods of investigating, more so than the scientific and the technology driven. Uh, Other members of my team are more scientific and technology, so they could probably do it virtually way better than I could. Um, but theoretically, you can. I know I've had several peers in the field do virtual paranormal investigations, and they've had varying levels of success. I've had peers do virtual psychic readings with varying levels of success. So I've got to say that there's at least a chance, but for me, the verdict is still out.
Hmm. So it's in the North Carolina area where you
Yep.
would do if somebody needed you, you could dispatch or somebody on your team.
And we go to several states around. We've been
Okay.
basically to Georgia, um, Virginia, like upper northern Virginia. I've gone to Tennessee, Kentucky. So Southeast-ish. I'll definitely say the more interesting the case, the further I'm willing to travel.
Gotcha. Um, Fascinating talking about this and the behind the scenes look. If somebody wants to reach out to you, even if it's somebody anywhere on the planet that's hearing this, watching this, just has a question, maybe feeling something and want to feel you out in terms of your opinion, how do they find you?
So I am on Facebook and Instagram. You can follow us at greatstateparanormal.com. You can also follow me at my personal Facebook or Instagram, although in fairness, you're probably just going to get a lot of cat memes on my personal pages. So probably not much there. Or you can reach out to us at greatstateparanormal.com. We have a contact us button, and that will go to any of our lead investigators, including myself.
Fascinating digging into this. I'd love next time we get together if we could actually even talk about some of the investigations you've done and what you felt, encountered, the outcome, and all of that. Would that be possible?
Yeah, I can definitely pull a couple of the private investigations that we've done. Obviously, scrubbing the client's identity and identifying characteristics for
Sure.
security.
Yep.
And I can also go into some of the history and details of some of the locations we host public ghost hunts at, because most of them are accessible throughout the day. We do it with a lot of historical associations, so they are museums, house museums, etc. And a lot of times we do this as a fundraiser for them. So even if you want to travel and go see it, I currently work at one of the historical associations, and I just led a tour a few days ago for someone who had originally gone on a ghost hunt with us, and they flew from Connecticut back down to North Carolina, and part of that was to go on the normal history tour and to learn more about the building.
Wow. I would love, even when we pick up at that point, because there's so many historical buildings, and I think it's intriguing what could be hanging around. Yeah. Dustin, thank you so much for being here today. Fascinating the work you do, and just even bringing it to light, what's going on out there, and whether we should fear it or not. And appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Steve. It's been an honor.
Same here. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.